Hey everyone, it's Gaby with Blue Bench Podcast. This week we're sitting down with Councilmember Jennifer Savage of Missoula. Earlier this week, Councilmember Savage led the charge on a landmark resolution making the pride flag an official city flag of Missoula, circumventing a law that bans the pride flag for flying on public buildings. You don't want to miss this episode. Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Blue Bench Podcast. I'm here today with special co-host Andy Nelson, Blue Bench associate with Montana Democratic Party, and special guest Councilmember Jennifer Savage of Missoula. Councilmember Savage, Andy, thanks for being on the show today. Well, first of all, happy Pride to both of you. It is Pride Month. Andy, I'm super glad you're on the show today because one, you're a Missoula resident, and I'm a Bozeman kid. And two, you are a proud member and a longtime advocate of the LGBTQ plus community. So I'm stoked you're here and ready to ask Councilmember Savage some questions today.
Thanks, Gaby. I'm stoked to be here. Thanks for inviting me. Happy Pride. And thanks for being here, Councilwoman Savage. We will get started. So I've got the first question for you. Can you walk us through the events that led up to your decision to introduce a resolution that would make the pride flag the official flag for the city of Missoula? For folks not familiar with what happened last week, can you fill us in?
Sure. Yes, happy to. So let's see. First of all, thanks to both of you. It's really nice to see both of you. And so I currently work at Missoula County Public Schools, and I started receiving emails both on my school address and at my city council address from concerned parents and students and community members about an email that had gone out that said basically teachers had to take down their pride flags out of their classrooms. So we started digging around. I talked to a couple school board members, talked to a couple members of council, and we realized that Governor Gianforte had signed on May 13th House Bill 819 that restricted the kinds of flags that one could fly on government property. And so we started digging even further and realized that similar bills had been passed in Idaho and in Utah this past legislative session. And Boise, the city of Boise and the city of Salt Lake City had also passed resolutions that at least made the pride flag, and I think they called it an acceptable alternative to their city flag. So we started digging in and trying to understand what could we do here in Missoula. We came to find out that we actually don't have a city flag in Missoula. And so the acceptable alternative thing wasn't going to work because there was nothing to have an alternative to. So we started sort of digging through resolutions. We pulled the Boise ordinance in particular and started writing something that we thought could work here in Missoula.
Very cool. My next question, what motivated you to support flying the pride flag in your community? Was there a particular moment that inspired you to take a stand, to take action?
Yeah, it's funny because I've been asked over time why this felt so urgent and why we moved so quickly. And the answer that I keep giving is that, I'm a mom of a queer kid and queer visibility is always urgent for me. And it felt like we needed to move quickly just based on the sort of outpouring we were also hearing. So like my personal reason aside, we were also hearing this outpouring from community from other parents, frankly, who were like, my kid feels safe when they see the pride flag in classrooms. My kid came home crying because their teacher had to take down pride flags or stickers or anything that basically had, imagery that, basically made them feel included. And so that felt particularly urgent. And we decided to move it to new business because it's just a prerogative that we do have as city councilors. We can bring things as new business and not have to bring them through the committee process. So that was kind of why I went so quickly.
And I think a lot of people, when we talk about this discussion and teachers having to remove their flags from their desks, a lot of people just don't understand how that little bit of imagery shows that that teacher is an ally and those kids in that school know that this is a safe person. And many people just don't understand that. So
yeah, I think it's true. And I think just having those it's almost like sort of just little moments of expression around that. So I think give kids the opportunity to kind of exhale just a little bit and say, like, okay, this teacher's safe, this space is safe. It also is a signal that sort of unwelcome behavior is not going to be tolerated in that space. And I think that was something else that was important to me. So yeah, I fully agree with you. I think some people don't quite understand the gravity of having, yeah, an image like that that says it's okay here, you're okay here.
Mhm.
So, Councilmember Savage, do correct me if I'm wrong, but if I'm understanding correctly, you kind of initiated this resolution that would make this policy. And my question for you is, how did the rest of the council respond, and then how did Missoula and the citizens of Missoula respond?
It's one of those moments. It was one of those moments for me on city council where I've said this before, you don't get a ton of wins in this work. I think when I ran for council, I thought, oh, this will be, we'll have so many moments where we'll feel like we're being supported. We're supporting the community and they're supporting us. And it isn't true. It can be contentious. Local politics can be contentious. It can sometimes even be contentious within council. But this particular resolution I found quick support and had several other council members who were helping me, make sure the language was what we wanted to say, who were reading drafts, who were, looking up different court cases to make sure that we were sort of within the correct parameters in what we were bringing forward. And so I felt a ton of support on council. We had 2 dissenting votes, but even those votes were predictable. I knew that was probably going to happen, and we had good conversations. I had good conversations with both of those council members going into that vote. Knew that they were probably going to vote no. It was a very respectful conversation, and I really appreciated that. In terms of the response from Missoula and from the community, I felt like in the days leading up to it, as soon as it was published that we were going to consider it, we just had an outpouring of support. People were super grateful. They were really wanted to see it. And we've had some of that since. Lots of people have been super supportive. We have also had the haters came out, afterward. And, it's quieted down a bit, but, there were certainly some vehement responses in opposition after we passed it. We got called lots of names. So,
Yeah. Well, I just want to say, as a Missoulian, thank you for your efforts in this. And the fact that 9 out of the 11 voted yes just makes me feel good that the leaders on my city council voted majority in favor of this flag adoption. So thank you. Kudos. You don't let the haters tear you down.
thank you.
Well, I'm seeing online right now, here in Bozeman, there are groups now talking about encouraging the Bozeman City Commission to do something similar. So it seems like people around the state have definitely been watching and supporting, even here in Bozeman, what you guys have done. But my next question for you is, do you see, I guess, this moment as a part of a broader trend of local government either embracing or pushing back against LGBTQ plus visibility?
I think for us, we were definitely pushing back against the state legislature and honestly, the governor having signed HB 819. Part of that is about local control, right? About telling us what we can and cannot do as a municipality. The legislature likes to do that, and they do it in so many ways. Our powers as a municipality are granted to us. Basically, it's like we have power, except for what the state legislature says that we do not have power to do. And that list is quite long, actually. And it gets longer with every legislative session. And so, like, for example, we can't have a bag tax as a municipality. Like, so for plastic bags, we can't, we can't have a local option sales tax on gas to charge to us. So there's a whole long list of ways that the state sort of limits the sort of scope and power of municipalities. This also felt like it wasn't just a sort of like, almost like a fiscal overreach. It was also sort of like a moral and cultural overreach for me. And that felt important to address and of all of the bills that went through the legislature this year, there were so many that were, to me, a complete waste of time and just hateful. And I think it was also a pushback against that. Our legislature gets 4 precious months every 2 years to enact legislation to better the lives of everyday Montanans. And I feel like they squander it. And they did last session, they did this session with bills like this. And so part of this for me was a pushback on that. I can't really speak to other municipalities and how, how they're sort of feeling. We all have different makeups. Helena's got a different makeup than Bozeman, than Missoula, than, certainly Billings. But I know that's sort of how I felt as a city councilor here.
Jennifer, how do you balance representing your entire constituency when some members oppose inclusive symbols like the pride flag?
That one's hard, and then it's not hard. It's one of those things. You're sort of elected to represent everyone in your ward, and sort of arguably, I would say you're representing all of Missoula. But when I ran for this office, I was really clear I would be bringing, my own beliefs to the table, and am sort of not willing to bend on those, and not when it comes to this, at least. And so I think, there's a lot of agreeing to disagree when it comes to that. It's funny, a lot of the haters have not come from Ward 1. I will say that, which I'm grateful for. Maybe I'm just not hearing it. But I know that there are people there that don't agree with it, and they may not agree with it sort of philosophically, and also just from a perspective of like, well, the only flag should be the American flag. It really doesn't have anything to do with sort of a political cultural moment. But I think I do my best, and I'm pretty open with the fact that, when I ran for this office, I was really interested in protecting equity, bringing voices to the table that don't often get to be at the tables of power, a lot of those kinds of, like, that kind of language. So I hope it's not a huge surprise to most people in the ward that I would be supportive of this.
So what would you say to people who claim flying the pride flag is politicizing government spaces?
Yeah, I guess I just don't agree with that. I feel like it's been a symbol of inclusivity for a really long time, and not necessarily a symbol of politics, though I know it gets used that way. And I think the argument that it wasn't a historical flag also was kind of interesting to me. I know that on the legislative floor that our Democratic delegation fought really hard to have it noted as a historical flag, just like some of the other ones, and they just got shut down. So it's interesting to me, and I appreciated that they actually took that step and went that far. I feel like, it just really, to me, is just a symbol of inclusivity, and so there's not a whole lot of politics in that for me.
Cool. So in a time when LGBTQ rights are under attack in many places, Montana and across the country, what role do you think local leaders should play?
I said this in my comments the night that we passed the resolution, but I think it's our job to be out loud advocates, basically. We do sit in the seats of power, though I argue our power is very limited, but we do have a platform and a microphone, and, a weekly sort of place where we can say what we need to say. And I think it's our job to stand up and to say something. And it feels important for me to do that. I think there are times when, frankly, I haven't done that as a counselor because it felt complicated, and not necessarily about LGBTQAI plus rights, but like other things just felt complicated and hard to sort of stand up for. But there are some things that just don't feel hard for me. And so I think that that the best thing we can do is use that platform for good.
So this has obviously made national headlines. You mentioned the haters came out in full force, as well as supporters. My question for you is, was there ever a moment when you doubted whether this was worth the political blowback or attention? And what made you move forward anyways?
In the days after sort of when the haters started to come out, I actually did, and I had thought about this beforehand, but I actually did have some concerns about personal safety with some of the comments we were getting. And I think, we often get sort of all council emails, so they get sent to all of us at once. I got a few personal ones that were pretty threatening that I sent on to the police chief and to our city attorney. It did give me a little pause because I referenced my child in this whole thing, and she is 18, and it's not like she's, 5 or something, but she's 18, and I did ask her to make her Instagram private. Our whole family did. I mean, we went through a few of those kind of measures, but never regretted doing it and never doubted that it was the right thing to do. And it was funny, the night of the vote, my daughter was up visiting a friend up in Whitefish, and um, she was watching and listening. And I was like, "You sure? You sure you're good? You read this whole thing? Are you sure?" And she's like, "I'm sure." Basically, I think she wrote something like, "Go give them hell, mom." And so, I mean, so I feel like because I've had her support and had the support of my family, I haven't felt like, oh, this was a bad idea. But it's not fun to get, people hollering at you and feeling like, you need to send emails to the police chief. So
I can imagine.
All right. What's next? What are other actions or policies you're pursuing to support inclusion and equity?
Oh, that's such a great question. So some of the things around equity are important, kind of from a little bit of a different perspective. It's more sort of economic equity. I represent Ward 1, which is the North Side Rattlesnake in downtown. And the North Side is experiencing some major growth. And with that, there is really not the infrastructure to support some of that growth. And that ends up sort of falling to some of our like low income residents who are struggling, for example, to walk from the Bellagio, which is a new set of apartments, to Lowell School, because they're going to be doing some infrastructure improvements this summer, which is awesome. However, the pedestrian route around is going to take them an hour to get from the Bellagio over to Westside Park. So I've been working to advocate for that, working to advocate and make sure that low income folks are not invisible. That's one thing that has been part of my entire council service, is really trying to represent the North Side in that way, making sure that those folks do have a say. So that's one place. In terms of other, places in terms of inclusion and visibility, we are looking to figure out how to make sure we can, we're going to actually bring a flag policy forward, so that our concern as soon as we did this was like, oh, great, now everybody's going to want their own flag. And, how are we going to combat this? And so part of that is making sure that any symbol that would represent the city of Missoula is going to be seen through a lens of equity and inclusion, and not through, hate or any of the other kinds of things that might come forward. We've had a few interesting suggestions so far with that, with flags that people might want to bring. So, we're working to do that. In terms of just like, in the rest of Missoula, like, it's a great question, and it's something good to think about moving forward, because I think that this one we almost had our hand was forced. And it would be great to sit back and actually create some strategy, and would love to talk to you about that at some point, Andy, about where you think the next, piece of work lies. So.
Great. That sounds good. Hit me up anytime.
Okay.
All right. And the last question, Jennifer, what advice would you give to other local leaders facing similar cultural flashpoints in their communities?
I think I would just say there's a little bit of just following your gut with this work sometimes. It's not always comfortable. And I think that for the folks that I was working with, and that's particularly Gwen Jones and Mike Nugent, when we were looking at the language, I mean, we really were just kind of like, we were like, let's do this. It's the right thing to do. And we had the support of all of the council chairs, and we knew that going in. And then we reached out to Sierra Farmer, Eric Melson, and they were a hard yes right away. They were immediately supportive. But I think that we were kind of just following our gut from the beginning to say, like, this isn't right. We got to do something about this. And so I guess I would say that while you can read as many Supreme Court cases as you want, like, really, that's where the work starts. And, know that there are other people in Montana that support you, and in places like blueberries in the tomato soup kind of places like we are in Missoula, like, so whether that's, an Austin, Texas, or a Boise, Idaho, or Eugene, Oregon, or whatever that looks like, there are people out there that support what you're doing.
Councilmember Savage, thank you so much for joining us today. And for our listeners, stick around. We've got some more updates on Pride events in Montana and how you can be an ally and advocate wherever you are across the state. All right, Andy, what's on the docket for Pride events for the remainder of June? Tell me what's on the calendar.
There's a lot. I'm always impressed. Every year, Montana has more and more prides on the calendar, which is amazing. So if you have already passed, but there's many more yet to come. So mark your calendars and hit up some prides if you can. This weekend, there's Pride happening in Flathead, up in Kalispell. The following week is Missoula Pride, June 20th through 22nd. Billings also has Pride that same weekend, the 20th through the 22nd. Butte Pride is July 5th. Libby Pride is July 26th. And of course, Montana Pride in Helena, our capital city, is the last one of the season, July 27th through August 2nd.
Awesome. So you can have your weekends filled with Pride events for the next few
Yeah.
Plan
Yeah. And I'll just put a plug in. If you've never been to a Pride, if you're not part of the LGBTQ plus community, definitely go. You don't have to necessarily be part of the community to attend Pride. It's about showing up and supporting those that are. So allies are just as important as LGBTQ people in regards to coming together during Pride season, because there's more power in numbers. So come out, support the LGBTQ plus community, and enjoy Pride season.
That's good to know. So allies, welcome. One more question for you, Andy. So in light of, what's going on politically and some of these kind of more challenging times politically, what can people do, advocates, allies do to help support the LGBTQ plus community in Missoula and Bozeman, across the state, wherever you are, in Conrad, every part of Montana? What can people be doing right now to support this community during this kind of challenging time?
Yeah. Well, the number one thing is to listen to queer and trans folks, because nobody knows better than the community itself what their needs are, right? In particular, right now, the trans community is heavily under attack. There's been, over 600 pieces of anti-trans legislation that have gone through state legislatures across the country just in the first 6 months of this year, including Montana. I mean, we had over, I think, 20 bills that were heard in hearings. Most of them got shut down, and unfortunately, a couple awful ones passed. But right now, trans folks, non-binary, two-spirit folks are the target. So number one, listen to queer and trans people, what their needs are. And number two, get involved in some advocacy efforts. There's all sorts of great organizations around the state of Montana doing good work in this realm. So I would recommend Forward Montana, Catalyst Montana, queer LGBT centers in your communities. For example, the Western Montana LGBTQ plus Community Center in Missoula, where I spent many years working. Piece of my heart lives there. Check that out. Glacier Queer Alliance up in the Flathead, 406 Pride in Billings. There's lots of Transvisible Montana is excellent. So lots of great opportunities to get involved in organizations doing the great work. And number three, I would say get involved with the Democrats' legislative action efforts during this session. So the session for Montana just ended and won't reconvene again until 2027. So you got some time there, but lots of things happen during the interim. So I would always recommend for folks to connect with your own legislators, your elected officials in your area to know what's going on and to make sure that they're fighting for LGBTQ rights all the time. Anyway, but our legislative action efforts happen every session. Definitely get involved with us in 2027 and all year long. You can get involved with City Council. Councilwoman Savage is on the Missoula City Council, and they just passed that flag adoption last week. So there's all kinds of things happening in regards to LGBTQ rights across the state all the time.
Great. Thanks for that, Andy. And thank you to all our listeners for listening to Blue Bench. We'll be in your feed again next week.